Okay, welcome back to the second part of our student mobility and open courseware session in this workshop, where we focus on what is relevant for the student community. We will start by a virtual presentation on virtual mobility by Marit Vriens from KU Leuven. So I propose that we jointly watch this short video on virtual mobility, which stems from the EU VIP project that has run, I think, a couple of years ago.
Oh, there's no video. First is the context and the definitions that we use in the framework of this project. It's about why did we do this project? Why did we start about doing something around the theme of virtual mobility, specifically in international work placements? And also because, we work with a lot of concepts. How do we define them? So just to make sure that we're all on the same page here as to what we mean. I think the broader context for this project, and that is something that I think all of us have to do with, is internationalization. Internationalization of higher education. It's one of the key issues in European higher education these days. We define it as a conscious integration of that international dimension in education and research. And one of the main goals of internationalization and why it is so important is that we notice that students from today need to develop intercultural competencies to be able to function in their professional and also their world in total in the future. So the main goal of internationalization is the development of intercultural competencies of the future workforce. One important way to realize internationalization is learning mobility, and I've already said internationalization is one of the key issues in higher education these days. We also see that from Europe. It is promoted a lot. The Europe 2020 strategy emphasizes the need for learning mobility, or the transnational mobility, for the purpose of acquiring new skills. And then one important strategy is realizing physical student mobility. European Commission has this goal of sending out 20% of higher education students in Europe out on an international experience by 2020, which is an ambitious goal. There is still a long way to go to get there by 2020. And another thing is also that, of course, you still have 80% of the students that does not have this cross-border physical experience. So that is also why we have to look at other strategies. Of course, physical student mobility stays very important, but there is also a need for other strategies. And what we would like to talk to you about today is the virtual mobility as a strategy for realizing internationalization. Virtual mobility is a relatively new concept, a broad concept that is also interpreted in many different ways. How we have interpreted, well, that is the definition we use here at the Media and Learning Unit, and that is also a definition that we've used in the framework of this project, is virtual mobility as a set of ICT-supported activities that realize or facilitate international collaborative experiences in a context of teaching and learning. So virtual mobility is about cross-border interaction that is realized at a distance. That is realized at a distance, and that is supported by ICT tools. What is important too is that I think in the beginning, when people started to work around this concept of virtual mobility is that we saw it a lot as something that had to realize the same advantages as physical mobility. But I think the more we work around the context, we see that it is a different way of being mobile. It is a valid way of being mobile, but it is no complete substitution for physical mobility. It's a different way of being mobile with different advantages and with different challenges connected to it. Another thing that we look at, we have virtual mobility, we also have international work placements. What work placements is also a very broad concept. There are many different ways of doing it. We have really focused here on placements that take care in a framework of formal education as part of a curriculum. But you also have internships or work placements where students take all the initiative themselves and they go to a company and they can put that experience on their CV, but their higher education institution is not really involved in that experience. What we look at here are those internships where the higher education institution is involved, where the internship is actually part of the accreditation. Student receives credits for it. This means that there will always be an intentional learning agenda part of this experience. So it is, for us, it's not the same as a student job, and we also want to make it. We also want to say that it's something different from a student project, in a sense that the student becomes part, or that the goal is that the student becomes part of an organization or a company for a while and really gets that professional experience. And as Ilse already indicated, there are three stakeholders when it comes to international work placements. There is a higher education institution, there is a company, and a student. Well, this is anyway how we see it, how we have defined it. Virtual mobility in international work placement, and that is really what we are working, or what we have been working around almost for the last 2 years. What I've done here, or tried to do, is make a visual representation of what virtual mobility can mean, of an example of what virtual mobility can mean in international work placement. The letters here indicate the three different target group, the S for students, the C for company, and the H for higher education institution. All those target groups during work placement ideally are in interaction with each other. That's what the lines, the dotted lines, and the full line mean. There are dotted lines between the higher education institution and the student, and the higher education institution and the company, and a full line between student and company, because that will be where the main interaction is, that the student interacts with the company, with the actors involved at the company in the work placement. But those are all lines of interaction, and when one of those stakeholders is abroad and you want to continue that interaction, there's always going to be need for some amount of ICT supported interaction. This is an example where you see the student stays at home and works virtually, or mainly virtually, for a company abroad, where all interaction between higher education institution and student is face-to-face. Between higher education institution and company is ICT supported, and the student brings maybe 1 or 2 visits to the company, but for the rest there is ICT supported interaction. When we talk about fully virtual internships, we really talk about, that the interaction between student and company is mainly or almost completely ICT supported. So this would be for us an almost fully virtual internship, when there is just a little bit of face-to-face interaction. But this is mainly to show, also because in the beginning of the project we started off with this very strict division between a blended internship and a fully virtual internship. And I think we noticed very quickly that it's not so easily to divide it like that there is always that face-to-face interaction is always advisable, even if it's very limited, and that if you want the three stakeholders to interact, that there is always some ICT interaction going on too. But that is in big lines what is really the context of our project and the definitions that we have used to work with it.
Okay, so this was a presentation by Marit. Since she isn't here, we cannot interact with her on this. But are there any remarks on the content or things you want to share about this? So it focuses on a few scenarios that are, I think, interesting in the context of virtual mobility. Certainly that you could do an apprenticeship at home. Yes. Yeah. So the whole idea of virtual internships is a kind of expansion of what is happening in Erasmus. Suppose that you are a student and you do an Erasmus exchange of 1 semester. But your study curriculum also involves an apprenticeship period. Now, often for students, this becomes a little bit difficult because there might be overlap. So that the moment that you want to do your apprenticeship, suppose you get an offer of a company to do a very interesting apprenticeship, which is accredited by your university, but they say, okay, but it only starts in 2 months, and this is just the period that you need to go abroad for your Erasmus exchange. So we spoke with many people who were responsible for Erasmus programs, and they said this is an often occurring problem, that students need to do an apprenticeship and they are in an exchange mode somewhere. And virtual apprenticeships can help out in the sense that, for example, you could do while you are abroad. So you are, for example, in Madrid on an exchange. You're a Belgian student. You are in Madrid, but you still do an apprenticeship in Belgium, but online. And this can be many things. This can be reports that you write, translations that you do, writing a manual, but also maybe research. And we had examples where a student did some research on cultural activities in Spain while being in an exchange in Spain. That is one scenario. So you are abroad, but you do your apprenticeship at home virtually. Another is that you are at home, but do a virtual apprenticeship abroad. And so you are in Brussels, you're near to the European Commission, and a Spanish company offers you an apprenticeship position because they need some liaison work to be done. And so you can attend conferences, workshops, lobby events as an apprentice for this Spanish company while you are in Brussels at your home town. We think that you can facilitate these kinds of virtual exchanges by making university network. So where universities have a list of contacts in Erasmus exchange places where students can go to search maybe a virtual apprenticeship and to find a local promoter. That's a little bit the idea. And these are the scenarios that were explored in this EU VIP context. In a sense, it is maybe a scenario that is quite far from an open courseware context, where the focus is not on apprenticeships in the first place, but really on learning materials. But I think that the world of open will open up also the world of apprenticeships, in the sense that procedures for apprenticeships, reporting, best practices, etc., can be very valid open materials also. So I think that there is some connection there, quite removed.
And maybe it's worth noting that the definition that was developed during the presented project, that European Commission in the meantime adopted that definition, and so if you look at the glossary of the European Commission, it's that definition that you can see. But it wasn't at the time that the presentation was recorded. So it's also the definition that we used in the handbook we are developing during this project.
Okay, other remarks? Or then we can close this part of the session. And